Okay, and now we're back, or I'm back. You're here too. Uh, Normally I would be introducing somebody, but now I'm going to introduce myself and my next presentation, which is mine. Uh, so, some things don't change. Using a philosophical approach to navigate uncertain times. Or, stuff I tell people, even if they don't ask. My first time at Food Innovate, I gave a version of this talk back in 2018, and that's the core of this presentation, is where it's coming from. It is how I approach product development. The last speaker referred to himself as an autodidact. I'm also an autodidact. I am not formally trained in anything that I do. I have a degree in political science. But my approach is thoughtful and perhaps different, but focusing on fundamentals or a philosophical approach. And it's helped me navigate to success on whatever sorts of problems I've had to approach. But first, a little bit about me. So in our industry, sorry, I misclicked a slide. Here we go. Now a little bit about me. In our industry, they say you are what you eat. But I believe we are what we make people eat. So here's some of who I am. If you've attended these events in the past, you've noticed like I focus on fundamentals and core concepts. And this presentation will go along those lines. Okay. As product developers in an R&D, we are fundamentally translators and brokers. We sit in the middle. To stereotype a bit, sales wants to sell each customer a custom product regardless of volume. Marketing wants eggplant or lilac when everyone else sees purple. Procurement, all new ingredients must meet MOQs and EOQs. Production or operations would like to run one SKU, one ingredient, continuously with no changeovers. They all want to run bottled water. FSQ or QA, they want to know where the papers are, where the documents. No docs, no run. Product development or R&D, we need to make sure that everyone thinks that we're doing what they want. Or more simply, marketing says purple or lilac, and we tell procurement and production, mix the red and the blue, but if they ask, call it lilac. So, mental map of product development. This isn't in any given order. This is not there's no true north on here. But again, the product sits in the middle, and these are some of the big things that I think about when I'm trying to figure out how to approach a product, how to approach a problem. Some may or may not apply to what you're doing at any given time, but if you go around the circle, you'll find that, by asking the questions, you'll get to a better place. It's helped me guide my career. And honestly, it's the only presentation that I give that people ask for copies of. So here we go. So an old adage, I learned this at Matson when I was an intern and I started there. People and clients want things fast, cheap, and good. And we would tell them, you get to pick two. Expanding on the underlying truth of this, right? Prioritizing large values that are potentially conflicting will make any development project run smoother. There's more than fast, cheap, and good, though. So figure out what is your hierarchy. My 5 core things to consider are safety. Right? Now, there's really no compromising on safety in my mind for a finished good. But it may not be important for a given task at hand. Then comes brand. Like, what are the constraints of your brand? How tight are they? For style, for product type, for ingredient type, for sourcing, and how, like, is this a branded product that needs to meet all those things, or is it something else? Practicality. Simple way, can it be made here, or do I know where it can be made? Could be that if you don't, practicality might not be a big deal. This is a big, blue sky innovation. But if you, are working for a manufacturer and you own a plant and that's the equipment that you have, it can be a very important factor. Cost always matters. Figure out what you have and how much you can spend. And then time. How much time do you get? This is one way to set up your pyramid, right? But it's not the only way. And depending on what you're prioritizing, you're going to have a different pyramid. Maybe your pyramid could be here, practicalities at the bottom, right? Can I do it? Then safety's, further away. I worry more about can I do it than I worry about safety. Practicality and speed. Or, hey, brand may be the overriding concern. And the others come in any order. The order is for you to figure out, but think about it. Ask the questions up front, because if you're developing a product with practicality and speed in mind, but what you need is something that safety is the primary concern, you're going to get way down the road and you're going to be off track and you're going to have to go back. Meeting expectations. Understand and meet expectations. So this is a classic Chinese painting of the vinegar tasters. Confucius, Buddha, and Lao Tzu all taste the vinegar, and they taste the same vinegar, but their different worldviews and expectations lead them to a very different experience. Right? Look how happy Lao Tzu is. Right? He expected the vinegar to be vinegar. Didn't judge it, but it met his expectations so perfectly because it was what it was. So there is no good, from my perspective, there is no good and bad, no right or wrong, just whether it meets expectations. An example of this is McDonald's does this extremely well. Their cheeseburger always meets expectations, right? And their French fries, right? But is it good? Would you judge it as such? In California, we have In-N-Out Burger. They make great burgers, and actually now they're expanded outside of California, so many of you can try them. But if you went to McDonald's and you ordered a McDonald's cheeseburger and you got an In-N-Out cheeseburger, you would be confused and disappointed. Develop to what you believe the expectation is. Understand the expectation and not about the good or the bad, right? Talk about meets expectation. Or another more colloquial way of saying this is nobody minds getting kicked in the shins at a shin kicking contest. Get kicked in the shins someplace else, it's an issue. Go to the contest, it's like, yeah, this is what I'm here for. So All right, look for emotional resonance, and hopefully this video will play. Let's see. I love that clip. I love that movie, Ratatouille. Uh, I love how the bite of food moves him through time and space. Great products, great food moves people through time and space. Um, we all have our emotional food triggers. We all have that thing uh, that takes us back, takes us to a place, takes us to a time. Um, and a lot of us have shared ones. Kraft mac and cheese for many of my generation is that thing. Vegemite or Marmite or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They are all these things that will transport people emotionally through time and space. I always have my team try to think about, like, can we hit that emotional, can we pull that emotional string? Do we understand what the emotional string is? If you have a product and you're not sure, can you make it similar to something else that resonates for people? It is a great idea and a laudable goal to do, but how do you execute on it? The great American chef David Chang wrote an article on this in Wired magazine in July of 2016. The Unified Theory of Deliciousness. It is available online. Just Google it, or I will send you the link if you email me. And in that article, he states that there are flavor patterns that overlap cultures, and that by recognizing them, we can ensure deliciousness regardless of cultural background. And I agree. But the only way I know how to do this is to taste everything, to truly taste everything and try to understand. If it is, you don't have to like it. You don't have to identify with it. But if this is that thing for this group, whatever it is, if it regionally, nationally, whatever, try it and understand it, be able to describe it, be able to like say, oh, I can identify that. But I won't eat it, but I can identify it, because by being able to identify it, you can make something like it, and you can take the people who do love it and you can make them feel happy. You can bring them back in time and space. So and while you're tasting, look for the universals. Like, what are those things? We all know salt, fat, sugar, acid, all those. There's books on that. But at what levels? What kinds? Like, build your mental map. Okay. Know your gatekeepers. At some level, success is getting a product or your project past whatever the next gate is. And oftentimes, those gatekeepers are individuals who decide, whether it moves forward, whether that be the buyer at Costco or Trader Joe's or Safeway or wherever, or they could be an internal person. Your boss, the VP, whomever. Know them and pander to their tastes as needed. Costco and Trader Joe's buyers are notoriously capricious gatekeepers. Yeah. There's no point in fighting with them and telling them this is the right thing, right? No, if they say, hey, I want, more salt or whatever, do it and move forward. And if hey, the buyer in Costco, in the Costco Midwest region really likes sweet things, great, make the product sweeter. Identify the gatekeeper, meet what they need. I had a marketing gatekeeper who hated oregano. I never showed her a product with oregano in it because she wasn't going to like it. It wasn't going to work for her. And she couldn't get past like her dislike of oregano. So, basil it was. Simple is always better. We've all seen products in our careers that have so many unique fingerprints on them from different developers or product brand managers or whatever, that they're just a mess, right? I call these Christmas trees. Everybody added their decoration, right? And no one knows where it came from or why it's there. When formulating or renovating, simplify, justify your ingredients. And because complexity only increases the risk of error, and so avoid it. And also in COVID times, like complexity was something that like complex products had real problems, right? If you had a long, very specific supply chain, you might not have had a product in the marketplace. If you had, jack cheese that you could get from 20 different suppliers potentially, you jumped through a lot of hoops, but you still made your products. The PFG circle. Pete Matson, a great mentor of mine from my early years, taught me about this. Pete would try something and he would say, this has solid PFG. And Pete was a giant man with a very deep voice, makes me sound like a soprano. Then he would wait, and his name was on the door, inevitably for the question of, hey, Pete, what's PFG? And Pete would say, pretty effing good. He didn't say effing though. His name was on the door. Now, a lot of people think the PFG circle is this little circle, right? But more often, the PFG circle is big. It's big. So if you combine the understanding of expectation and PFG, an emotional resonance, this allows a small company or somebody looking to be nimble and take time out of their timeline to forgo testing. Because in my past, product testing is for the rich and the slow. And if you're questioning whether or not this is true, and you're like, I always do concept or product testing, how many times have you tested a product and you had 3 or 4 variations that you sent out and you wanted directional feedback, or you wanted to know like, hey, which one of these is the one to move forward with? And everything came back at parity with no directional feedback. Almost every test I've ever run, it's like, okay, I guess we'll do what we want. Comfort zone, one step away. This is one where there's a lot of opportunity to understand now. As omnivores, humans can learn to eat and like anything. This cuts both ways. Good for adaptability, right? Bad for risk of poisoning. So our psychology becomes, we'll take one step outside of our comfort zone, particularly when it comes to packaged food. So this is an opportunity now to understand, hey, where are people's comfort zones? They have changed. Like we've seen the regression to the core, to the comfort. So where is the growth zone now? Where is the comfort zone? Where do these line up? But they still exist, and people will still take one step out if you give them the opportunity. The last presenters of Olipop very solidly focusing on like, let's get them to take one step. Don't let the need for understanding get in the way of success. When my wife was in college, she managed to get an A in her art history class by not letting the need for understanding get in the way of success. The professor would point out a good use of negative space. And with a painting, she would sketch the painting, write down a good use of negative space. When the test came, she then gave the answer, good use of negative space. Did she know what negative space was, or what functionally the difference between good use and bad use of it was? No, not really. But did she pass the test? Yes. Often this is our task. Do I really know the synergies between different gums? We're more now than I did. Or what starch modification is best for different processing parameters, or how to make a PowerPoint presentation that looks better than a third grader's? No, not really. But I can still get to the right answer for my product if I rely on the experts who do know and carefully follow instructions. Over time, we will learn some of these esoteric bits of knowledge, but yes, until then, know who to call. So here's the mental map again. Need for understanding, standards, gatekeeping, expectations, emotional resonance, one step, PFG, and simplicity. Hopefully by considering these as you start your project ahead of time, you will be able to get to a better solution quicker. And when you come up to these situations with COVID, I've found these tools to really help me understand how and why things are changing. Before I jump to questions, I have to say thank you. Sometimes you are who you know. And I'd like to pay homage to a person who recently passed away, but impacted my career more than perhaps any other. Pete Mattson, the founder and visionary behind Mattson, behind the Mattson consulting firm, a true giant of innovation. He was a mentor and a role model to so many in our industry. Chris Cornyn, who is well-known innovator, dubbed Pete the Steve Jobs of food in a recent article he published. But I think of him more as the Jay Carnegie of food. Pete made connections between people, products, technology, and foods, and he did it with a generous heart. I will forever be grateful for Pete's influence on me, and in his honor, I suggest that we all look to make generous connections as we come out of this year. Now, are there any questions?